everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Soul Focused Radio. This is your host, Martin Friedman, and today I am flying solo. I know you've gotten used to hearing the voice of Cindy and the voice of Martina, as have I, and I miss them. I'm sure you do too. And they will be back very soon. Today, because of some technical difficulties and timing, we are just going with the segment of myself having a conversation with Felicia and Stephany. It's part 2 of our conversation around self-forgiveness. There will be another conversation that will be also part of self-forgiveness, and that will be with Cindy Edwards and Tirza Barnes, who is one of our facilitators that you have met previously. And it's an awesome conversation. So I'm excited you all are going to get to hear that as well. So for today, just can't wait for you to hear the second part of this powerful conversation. Remember, as always, subscribe to us on all the platforms. Hit like, hit subscribe, especially if you're on YouTube. Please continue to help us grow as a community as we are continuing to grow and growing our family and growing our voice and growing the soul-focused way. So with that being said, let's go with part 2 of the conversation, the Teddy Bear Moses moment conversation with myself, Felicia, and Stephany.
Creating is the new way of fighting. At the Soul Focus Group, we're doing something radical, people. Instead of fighting against racism, sexism, and classism, which are all designed to keep us apart, we are bringing people back together again. Want to know how? By creating human solidarity. In doing so, we're improving productivity, increasing effectiveness, and transforming the way people communicate. Essentially, we're healing broken relationships. Let us bring our Creating Human Solidarity 2-day workshop to your business or organization. Sign up for this 2-day in-person workshop at thesoulfocusgroup.com, because it's time we come together.
You know, one thing I was thinking about before we got on the call, and the plot twist, Martin gave us the plot twist, was like about the relationship between self-forgiveness and self-responsibility. Because I feel like, you know, now that we're talking about men, like a sort of a quality or a symptom of patriarchy is like being very punishing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And yes. The truth is that, like, when we're just in a state of punishing others or being self-punishing, there's not really an opportunity for like taking self-responsibility, you know? Like this is such a silly example, but it's so seared into my memory. Like the first time I ever had to forgive myself, like actually try to do it, it was when I drove over a squirrel. And I felt so bad, and I was crying, and I was just feeling awful. And the person I was in the car with was like, put your hand over your heart and just say, forgiven. You know, just say, forgive me, goddess, I forgive myself, I think. And I remember it was like, I couldn't do it. And it was so hard and so scary. It felt so strange to say, I forgive myself, partly because I was like, well, do I have the right to forgive myself? You know, but also partly because it was like, if I can forgive myself, if I actually hold the key to that lock, you know, then like I truly am responsible for myself. You know, I can choose to be in punishing relationship with myself, or I can choose to be in forgiving relationship with myself. And that's actually a tremendous amount of responsibility for yourself and your actions, you know? And I think about the way that like patriarchy has not taught any of us, but I imagine has definitely not taught, you know, people who are socialized as men, as male, to be able to reflect and then forgive and then hold responsibility for themselves. You know, like it's a really different thing to just go around sort of doling out punishment to yourself or others. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but that's like the distinction between those two things is really clear to me, that one sort of comes with responsibility, taking responsibility, and one comes without it, you know?
Right. Oh, that's powerful. I love Stephany.
Yeah.
Yeah, how you're bringing together forgiveness and responsibility. You know, I'm thinking the opposite of forgiveness is me holding resentment.
Mm-hmm.
And how when I've, because I can practice being resentful really easily. That's a part of my lineage too. And how that feels in my body. And also, it really nurtures that idea that the power is outside of myself.
Mm-hmm.
So then I can be resentful or mad at other people. But when I understood a little bit better about my own power and
Mm-hmm.
that I have agency, I have a choice. It doesn't matter what you do to me, I still have 100% choice as to how I react or respond. And that's all my responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And so that has me feeling so much more powerful,
Mm-hmm.
even though we understand that there are these external forces, patriarchy, capitalism, racism, that act on us. But still, I have 100% responsibility how I choose to respond to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's powerful. Like to imagine our youth having that understanding
Mm-hmm.
of, like that's agency.
Yeah.
That's your most powerful self, you know? And for me, it's so positive. Like, yeah, yeah. And that feeling just came over me.
Yeah.
Thank you for that offering, Stephany.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate it too. And I appreciate that you kind of segued us,
Mm.
out of the plot twist as you said it. But I just want to say, like, I think the way that you all addressed it through that lens, through the lens of the way I asked you the question was really, I mean, it was pretty beautiful and powerful, which are words I know overuse all the time. But on these podcasts, but I also really mean it. Like the reason why I asked that question is because I know, and you said it, Stephany, and you said it too, Felicia, that you can't forgive the people that might be the hardest to forgive in your life if you haven't gone through a self forgiveness process. And as I said at the very beginning, forgiving myself has been harder than forgiving anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an ongoing process. It's not like a one shot thing. It's not a one time thing. I was actually diagnosed by a psychologist or therapist. I don't know if she's a psychologist, but therapist that I saw. She diagnosed me with self hate. She,
Mm.
as a condition, right?
Mm.
And so I wanted to ask you all,
Oh.
where does self-love come into this? Because you talked about self-forgiveness and self-responsibility. And then where does self-love come into this conversation for you all?
Oh.
Because I know I couldn't even begin the process of forgiving myself. I've mentioned this before, I would do a 3-part forgiveness meditation where I would forgive myself for things I did to other people, forgive myself for things I did to myself, and forgive other people for the things they did to me. And the one piece I would always leave out was forgiving myself for things I did to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That was the one I always left out. So I'm really curious where the self-love, where self-love has played into this for you all.
Oh, that's powerful because I would even venture to say that you really weren't forgiving other people like you thought you were.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't give it to yourself, and I think that's the performative side of forgiveness.
Right.
Really, like it's impossible. It's the physics of it, the chemistry of it is impossible. We can't give what we don't have, and we haven't given ourselves. So, that's a space that I would definitely inquire into and love, the love that I guess that I'm really focused on right now at this time in my life is unconditional love. So not the love that I love you because you do things I like, not the conditional love. And I think that's what we were all raised with is, we're very myopic in how we love. So for me, it's unconditional love. And what does that look like? That's loving myself even when I'm falling short or I'm showing my shadow side of myself I don't consider it to be lovable. And and for me, that unconditional loving of myself or that self-love has everything to do with the forgiveness process. because you really can't enter into a forgiveness process, I think, until you're able to really love yourself holistically, with the bruises and, all of the trauma. Like, it's not contingent upon me acting anyway, me looking anyway, but just being able to show up as myself and realize when I fall short of even my, belief system or value system, and still being able to love myself through that. And so what I've noticed in my practice is me practicing this unconditional loving of myself has grown in my relationships with everyone else. Again, it's a physical understanding of life, just the energetic understanding that what I'm loving on myself, everybody else gets to benefit from this, because you can't hold it back, like, it's just natural law. So that brought up a lot for me.
Yeah. I feel like I'm still on the journey of figuring out the answer to that question for myself. For a very long time, I was like, self-love, what does that even mean? Like, and where I'm at with it now is that there are these things that I think it's like you can almost break off these little pieces that in some add up to a practice of self-love. For me, self-love is a practice. It's not just like a thing, but self-forgiveness, self-trust, self-compassion, like those are things that I can really sort of wrap my arms around and practice. I can practice having compassion for myself in moments when I feel like I, fucked up or whatever. Like, I can practice having compassion when I'm looking back at mistakes that I made and trying to learn from them. I can practice trusting myself, right? And those things start to add up to, I think, self-love. And the other thing, it's like so silly, but I have these like really small little, just almost rituals that I had to start doing as a practice of self-love. Like, a few years ago, someone told me to start just like buying myself flowers. And so I would just get myself, when I could afford it, like a dozen pink roses. And I would have a dozen pink roses on my coffee table when I came home. And it was this weird thing of being like, I would come in the door and I would be like, oh, those are so beautiful. Someone got those for me. I got those for me. Because I think I deserve to have that experience when I walk in the door. Wow, and it's like this loop of like, oh, I'm doing this thing for myself that then makes me feel like I deserve the thing that I'm doing for myself. And it was like flowers, and like I would light a candle when I would have dinner for myself. When I would, I live alone, so when I would make myself dinner, I would light a candle and just have a little candlelight dinner by myself. And it's such a small thing, but it's like you're investing. You're showing yourself that you deserve to have that feeling. And for me, those are all things I would do for a lover, those are all things I would do for a friend or a partner, but they weren't things I would do for myself. And so actually just doing them for myself repeatedly started to make me feel like, oh, I'm actually demonstrating that I am loving and deserving of love,
Oh, yes. Go ahead for buying yourself flowers.
Oh, it's the best. It's a game changer.
Yes, it is. I'm a flower worshiper from many years ago. And that's, flowers for yourself. There's nothing like it. Martin, I do appreciate your flowers. No doubt about it. I want to be put on record. Yes, but it did start with me buying myself flowers, and doing those things for ourselves that, just as you said, an intimate partner, a lover, what we would expect, to some degree. Yeah. And that was beautiful in terms of your process of feeling uncomfortable with it, and it's like, oh my God, that's beautiful, Stephany. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, yeah. What are your favorite flowers, Felicia?
Sunflower, purple sunflowers, actually.
Purple sunflowers.
Yes. And I really love all colors of sunflowers. And I've not seen a real purple sunflower. It's it's like my spirit flower.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love sunflowers. And the reason is because they come in all shapes and sizes. Like, you can get the
Mm-hmm.
tiny ones or you can get the real big mammoth, that have all
Yeah,
the seeds. Yeah. Do you have a favorite flower, Stephany?
I do. I like roses. I like the orange, bright orange sunset roses, and I also like
Ooh,
pink roses
okay.
and
We got
purple
to remember
roses.
that,
I know.
Martin.
What about you, Martin?
I'm not a big flower person. I really like buying flowers, and
Uh-huh.
Felicia can tell you I really don't like receiving them,
Huh.
and I've only gotten them a couple times, and it's just not, I don't know, it's just not my thing. It's not important to me. I'd rather you give me some chocolate,
Okay.
or some really good dark chocolate with like almonds in it or something,
Noted.
or some fried tofu, some like really good vegan food. But I've actually grown to really enjoy buying flowers,
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
and I'm pretty good at it. Felicia
Yes,
can tell you, I have a pretty good
absolutely.
eye, and
Nice.
I have a great flower store, and
Yeah.
it's a place that I pass by a lot, so I can just like, you
Yeah.
can just hit me like, oh, today's the day to buy
I
Felicia
love
flower,
that. I
Yeah.
love that.
And I will say too, I mean, I like having them around.
Yeah.
I do. I've
Mm.
grown to like having them around,
Yeah.
but I definitely don't know flowers well enough to know what my favorite
Yeah.
would be.
Yeah.
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 But it's a good question.
That's a good
So,
question.
yeah, it's a great question. So I'm gonna segue us a little bit, just because I know we have a
Oh,
time
that's
limit
right.
to
Yeah.
our conversation today.
Mhm.
So I really appreciate you all flowing with me as you have, and just anything else that you all want to say to our listeners about the process of self forgiveness,
Mhm.
what it's been like for you, and what it continues to be like. I'm really glad you said what you said, Stephany, because the self love for me is definitely still a process, and I'm doing like inner loving parent work, and parent work on my inner child, learning to love my inner child. And I think that's, in many ways, that's what I heard you describing, was the process of that. And I think for me, it connects to forgiveness, because I know that part of the reason why I couldn't forgive myself and would forget to forgive myself in the process was that because I was struggling with not liking myself and not really wanting to be here. And it's like, why would I waste my forgiveness on somebody I don't
Ooh.
even really want to be here that much,
Mm.
So that's why I asked the question, and why I see it tied together. So, but it's just anything that you all feel like you want to pass on to our listeners that you haven't said yet about the process of self-forgiveness, or anything else that comes to your mind. Your favorite bird, since we've done flowers, or whatever you want to talk about.
Well,
Uh,
I'll say this is like a maybe kind of a larger thing, and maybe it's a little heavy, so I'll say it. And then, but
hmm.
I think it's actually very dangerous not to forgive ourselves. I think that
Ooh.
especially, I think that a lot of the violence that's enacted in the world comes from people who have decided that they are fundamentally bad and that there is no room for redemption, right? And I think that that
Ooh.
feeling of hopelessness, or that feeling of whether it's I'm going to hell, whatever the framework is, right? It's like,
Right.
I'm bad,
Right.
therefore nothing that I do matters. I think, and I
Oh.
know from personal experience that people do a lot of harm from that place. People are very dangerous when they're in that place. And so if we don't
Mm,
know how to forgive other people, and especially ourselves, we're unlikely to be able to pull ourselves out of that place. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? And so
Absolutely.
I think it's like
mhm,
actually really imperative as a society that we start to learn from one another how to forgive
Mhm.
ourselves, because that is where we can actually start to change. But
Absolutely.
if we believe that there's good and bad, and some people are just bad, and maybe we're someone who's just bad, right? There's no hope that we're ever going to be
Mhm.
able to change. And so I just think it's really imperative for our future that we start to learn how to do it.
Oh, Stephany, you preaching now. Yeah, I definitely agree. And I would venture to say that we're like born into and taught an unforgiving kind of nature. We're taught this, You know, you look at little kids playing, there's a level of forgiveness and they move on quickly, you know, just automatically, but they're taught to hold on. And it's beautiful to watch, you know, children play in that way. Like somebody causes them harm in that moment, they cry, they move on, you know. Yeah, that was powerful, Stephany. My reflection would be I looked up forgive, and as you know, in preparation for, you know, the time with you all, and from my source it says it's derived from a Greek word that means to give back.
Mm.
And
Ooh.
so yeah, I know. I was like, that makes so much sense, you
Oh,
know,
it
with all
really does.
yeah. And now, you know, just in full disclosure, I didn't double check this or triple check it, but you know, so to self forgive means to give back to self, you know, and it is again, you know, it's just we're able, you know, you know, Martin, you know, you were specific in terms of saying something that you haven't said, but it's just so powerful to me for us to have a practice of giving back to ourselves every day, you know, so that we are full of ourselves in a healthy and authentic way, you know, a relationship with ourselves that it just bubbles over into every relationship. And to, you know, Stephany's point, we're not going to be able to cause harm. Or if we do cause harm, you know, the downtime is going to be really quick to, you know, restore and rejuvenate, you know, and apologize, you know, in those relationships because we're self-reflective. We're already having a practice of forgiving ourselves on a daily. So it makes sense that, you know, when I've caused you harm, that I'm going to be able to, and that's love. You know, I'm going to be able to say, you know, I care about myself so much that I care about you so much, you know? So it's that cycle that just keeps, you know, it's a beautiful, loving cycle that keeps feeding itself. And then we won't have, you know, the folks who are so destructive to themselves and therefore other people, you know, but Stephany put it so well.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved how you said that stuff. That was incredible. And it you know, the self-forgiveness is not a selfish act because the world benefits, the people in our lives benefit, and the world benefits from us going through the process of forgiving ourselves. So thank you both so much. This is exactly as awesome as I knew it would be. And I could keep going, and how could it not? How could it not? And I mean, I could easily see us, you know, having this conversation more, and definitely going to reach out to you both, you know, for more conversations on topics like this moving forward. So I just want to thank you both again for taking the time and the energy and the effort and flowing with my sort of curveball there a little bit. And just want to thank you both a lot.
Yes. You're welcome, Martin.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stephany.
Thank you, Felicia. This was beautiful. I'm going to be thinking about that definition. That makes so much. You just made it all make sense for me at the end there to give back. That's beautiful.
Yeah, to give back. I was like, oh, yes, it makes sense. Yeah, giving it to ourselves. And of course, you know, in those times where, you know, I'm really full on giving to myself, my cup is overflowing. So, you know, it just makes sense. It just makes sense. I've experienced it, you know, so yeah, it's a beautiful practice, but it's hard because it's just not the way I was raised or trained, you know, so this is still a new practice.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. And yeah, love to you both. And I look forward to talking to you both again soon.
Yes. Thanks, Martin. Thanks, Stephany.
Love you both. Bye.
Love you all.
When it comes to racism, the truth is most people are only reporting on the problem. They're not solving the problem. At the Human Solidarity Project, we're doing something to solve the problem. Through our Sending the Right Signal workshop, we're teaching organizations and businesses how to move beyond DEI work. Next, we're teaching organizations how to heal from the damage caused by racism. And finally, we're showing organizations how to create cultural integration and truly bring people together. Sign up for these 3 virtual workshops today at soulfocusgroup.com. Your organization will never be the same.
All right, everybody. Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to that as much as I did listening to it again. What a powerful conversation with 2 very powerful human beings that I'm extremely blessed to have in my life and to have as part of this soul-focused journey. As I also feel very blessed to have each and every one of you on this journey. Know that we love you very much. We want you to be a part of everything that we do. Please go to soulfocusgroup.com. Check out everything we do. Go to our Instagram page, go to our Facebook page, like us, subscribe, share everything that we're doing. Like and subscribe and share all of the podcasts. And, do what we always ask you to do, Soul Focus family, and that is stay safe, stay well, and most of all, stay soul focused.